Hey there, awesome physics students. Let's talk about how to measure voltage in circuits. Now, when you measure voltage, you'll use what's called a digital multimeter or DMM, or sometimes just called a multimeter or voltage meter. And it looks just like this. This is one that I have. And it always has two wires that will be the probes that you use to measure the voltage. And this, most of these can measure voltage, they can measure current, they can also measure some other things like resistance and capacitance and some other things like that. But right now we'll just talk about how to use it for voltage measurement. Oftentimes the wires that are connected to this will be connected differently whether it's in voltage measurement mode or current measurement mode. So you need to look on the device and understand how to use that particular one. They're not all the same. What will be the same though is how you connect these probes, these two probes, and there's usually a red and a black one, how you connect those to the circuit. So the way, let's say you have a simple circuit like this where you have a battery and the positive side is this longer side, and then you have resistor 1 and resistor 2. And let's say you want to measure the voltage across the battery. Well, the red probe on this multimeter is the positive probe and the black one is the negative. And so you just simply connect it so that the red one is connected to the positive and the black one is connected to the negative. But remember that if you connect that red one to the positive and black one to the negative, I can measure it at this point or this point. The voltage difference along this wire will be zero. And so as I move the probe along this wire, then the voltage measurement will not change. And so I can measure it here. I'll get the voltage of the battery. Here's the voltage of the battery. Here is also going to be the voltage of the battery. Well, as you can see, I'm just measuring the voltage across the two resistors together. And so that understanding how to measure voltage actually helps you understand what voltage is, or gives you some intuition about what it is and how it behaves. If I wanted to just measure the voltage just across one of the circuits, or one of the resistors, I would take my multimeter and I would just put it across one of these, and I would put the red one on the top, more positive part, and the black one on the bottom, and that will give me a positive voltage measurement there that I'm expecting. And so that measures the voltage drop across this resistor. So the way I do that is I represent that in a drawing as this. So I usually put the V for voltmeter and I'm connecting it like this. Notice that I'm connecting in what's called a parallel configuration. The idea here is that when you get current that's flowing out of the battery, that current, you want just a tiny current to come down here when this is connected, because this is a real object that has real resistance, this multimeter that we're going to use to measure this. And so in reality, a small amount of current will come down here, but we don't want to affect the circuit that we're actually measuring, because that will change the very thing that we're trying to measure. So to do that, we want a very tiny current to come through the multimeter, which means that this is going to have a resistance that is huge. And in fact, we're going to want this resistance, idealized resistance of a voltmeter, to be about infinity. If it's infinite or very big, then that means only a tiny amount of current will come through here, and that won't have a big effect on changing the circuit while we're measuring it versus while we're not measuring it. Okay. Now if I want to measure the voltage drop across the resistor 1, I connect it like this. If I want to measure the voltage drop across resistor 2, well, I just change the connection so that the voltage probes are across the second resistor. And so then I would, this is going to be me measuring it across the second resistor, like that. And you can see these two arrangements are different, and so the voltmeter in general is going to give a different voltage reading depending on whether I'm measuring it across R1 or measuring it across R2.